Hello and welcome to today's lesson on engine failure in flight. So let's imagine that we've taken off from the San Carlos airport. We've headed over to the Half Moon Bay practice area. We're doing maneuvers and suddenly we hear the engine noise subside. We check our tach and we see a drop in the RPM. What do we do here? Well, we need to act decisively because lives may be at risk and we've experienced an engine failure. So we have a process ABCD that we follow that we're going to break down. We're going to go over engine failure, the causes and symptoms of it, the immediate action items that we memorize and take, the checklist that we follow. When consulting checklists, always do it for the make and model of your airplane. We're going to go over emergency procedure and stabilized approach to landing, and we're going to go over the safety considerations involved with this maneuver. So for an engine failure, our engine or power plant may experience either a partial or complete loss, and we want to be aware of the variables that cause that. So essentially, it's going to be a fuel blockage to our engine or typically overheating with the engine itself. We're always going to want to consult the POH, as we mentioned, be extremely familiar. There's going to be some bold action items in section 3 of our POH that we're going to want to have memorized because those are the things that we need to do immediately. And always aviate, navigate, communicate, fly the plane safely, fly down to your landing site, then communicate, then pull out your checklist. But always do it in this order. So for our procedure, we call it ABCD. We first establish the best glide airspeed, then we find the best place to land. We use our checklist to attempt to restart the engine and prepare the cabin for a forced landing. And then we declare an emergency, talk to ATC, and utilize their resources. So for that first step, airspeed, we're going to want to establish the best glide speed. What does that mean? Well, that means that at a certain speed for our airplane, we're going to have the greatest forward distance for a given altitude loss. In our Cessna 172 Sierra, we're going to have a 9-to-1 ratio. So if we establish VG of 68 knots, we're going to be able to glide forward 9 feet for every 1 foot of loss, in ideal conditions. If we're any faster or slower, we get less than that. So we want to have the most available options to us. So we're going to establish that best glide speed so we're not wasting the altitude that we have. It's going to occur in the highest lift to drag ratio. So we're going to want to pitch for it with our control column and then trim. So typically add nose up trim to relieve those control pressures. Then after we've established that, we're going to find our best place to land. We need a timely decision. If we're wasting time, we're wasting altitude, and we're wasting options. Think of a cone in your airplane, and the higher you are, the bigger that cone is on the ground. That cone is going to be your available options to land. The lower you are, the smaller that cone will be on the ground. So that's what's below you. You're looking for number one, an airport or runway. If that's available to you, that's definitely the best place to land. You're going to glide directly to it. If that's not available, we're looking for a large open field, somewhere flat, clear of obstacles. If that's not available, we can look for a road, but we want it to be low traffic because cars, power lines are going to be huge obstacles to us. So we're finding our best place to land. We're noting our wind direction because we want to land at the slowest ground speed when we touch down. So upwind will give us that downwind. We'll have a higher ground speed, so we always want to be aware of our wind direction. From our METARs, we can look around and see smoke or wind or dust blowing, and that'll tell us our wind direction. And then our checklist. If altitude and time allows, again, aviate, navigate, then communicate, use your checklist. But we're going to diagnose and fix the engine failure. So we're going to consult that POH. But as it says here, to restart, we're going to make sure there's no fuel blockage. So we're going to have that fuel shut-off valve, make sure it's pressed in, it's not shutting off from our fuel, okay? We're going to go for our fuel selector. We're going to flip it to both. We're going to turn our auxiliary fuel pump on. We're going to put the mixture full rich. We're going to crank those mags, check, make sure they're on both. And if none of that works, okay, so we're going to prepare for a forced landing. So that's going to be, we're going to maintain that best glide. We're going to squawk 7,700. tell ATC we're having an emergency. We're going to declare that emergency on 121.5. We're going to say Mayday, Mayday, Skyhawk, our tail number, where we are, that we're having an engine failure, forced landing. They'll give us priority handling if needed. And at that point, we're going to basically prepare. If once we're close to the ground, we're going to prepare for landing. We're going to turn that master off, unlatch our doors, seatbelt, and make sure our seatbelt's on, protect the body. So as we plan this approach down, we're used to landing in a normal downwind. That's how we practice. That's how we're going to be able to most effectively judge this landing. So let's set up for a normal downwind. We're going to try to get to a downwind position and beam our landing point, 1,000 feet AGL as we normally do. Then we're going to want to turn base. Typically our base is a little bit closer to our landing runway or field than normal because we don't have power. And we're judging it as necessary. If it looks like we're too high, we can extend our base out. If we're too low, we can fly direct to our landing point. We're going to add the flaps as necessary until we're on the final. The POH tells us what to do on a forced landing. We're going to consult that. So we're going to aim for 65 knots on that final descent, 30 degrees of flaps. And again, our aiming point should appear to be stationary. So as we're descending down to that field's growing in size, or that runway, or wherever we're landing, but the shape isn't changing, and that tells us we're on a nice constant glide slope, stabilized approach down to landing. And we're going to want to touch down at the lowest possible airspeed. So as we enter ground effect, we're bleeding that airspeed off, pitching back in ground effect, and we're touching down. That's why we're at full flaps here. So we can touch down at the lowest possible airspeed. Again, if we're low to the ground, we're not pulling out a checklist. Eyes are outside. Aviate, navigate, communicate. We're going to maintain our situational awareness. So what that means is when we're doing this maneuver, not in a real life emergency, but practicing, we're discontinuing 500 feet above ground level or above, because Part 91 tells us we can't go any lower than that. And we're going to do a go around. So we're going to cram that throttle. We're going to establish a climb and clean up the airplane, and then have a nice climb out, typically at PY. That's it for today. So our next would practice this in flight. So looking forward to meeting you in person.